Hello YouTube. So I got a new project. I might have lost my mind. So I uh I had a bass boat a while back and I sold it because it just didn't fit my current lifestyle and kind of goals at that time. And I honestly don't regret selling that one, but I've been wanting a new one for a while, another one for a while now. And while I'd like to go out and buy a brand new, whatever bass boat, it's just not in the cards. One, I don't want to spend that much money on a boat, and two, I can't afford it. So I decided that I really enjoy fixing things. So I bought a boat that needs a bunch of work. A few things are a surprise. A lot of things were not a surprise, but we're going to take a look at it. We're going to see what I got. So this is my new bass boat. It's a 1987 16-foot Venture. Actually not made far from our house here, about 25 miles away. These were made in Winchester, Tennessee. I've done a little research. I kind of looked the boat over when I was buying it, but I don't know. I know most of the stuff that's wrong with it now, but I didn't realize it when I actually was buying it. So just a few things that I do know are wrong with it. Everywhere that there's wood in the deck, like up here under the front deck here, I can stick my finger in here. There's no wood left in there. I don't know if you can see that, but the wood is all gone there. The wood is gone in the front up here. I mean, the lights aren't hooked up. None of the hatches are actually riveted on anymore. There's a mess of wiring in there. If you can look inside there, it's just a disaster of wiring in there. But this is the kind of project I was looking for. I'm pretty happy with the look of the boat. I like the styling of the boat. Obviously, it's going to need all new wiring. It's going to need a lot of stuff, and I don't know what all I'm going to do yet. But what I do know is that I want to try to get the motor running before I do much, because if the motor doesn't run, that's going to really change the project and may end up derailing the project completely. So when I bought this, I was told that the guy that I bought it from, the guy he bought it from, he said, she said, it's supposed to have a bad stator but run otherwise. The guy that I bought it from said he never even tried to start it. So I got some parts here, and we're just gonna go over the process of what I'm gonna do to try to get it running. So I'm gonna get set up, and we're gonna see how this goes. See you guys in a bit. Okay, so the first thing that's gonna be on our list is, if you look down here, as you can see, one of the cylinders for the trim pump is out, the other one's not, and it's actually sitting on the lock for the tilt. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead, and I got some power steering and trim fluid, and we're gonna check the fluid in it and see if we can get the trim pump to actually hold the weight of the motor up, and see where that goes. So I'm gonna get that done, and I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, so what I can tell you for sure is it wasn't really low on fluid in the trim pump, but the motor absolutely refuses to turn. I even tried jumping it on the solenoids there, and it still just absolutely does not want to turn. So we'll have to look at that later, but I got this propped up at a good angle, and so now I found these wires, and I'm pretty sure these are the stator wires, so that could be part of the problem with that. I don't see where they're supposed to go, so I'm probably going to have to figure out some type of wiring diagram to figure out where those are supposed to go. But for now, it's got some oil in it, but I'm going to go ahead and hook this up to a can of mixed gas that I have. I'm going to make a fuel line. As you can see, I got the cover off, and the carbs are not absolutely terrible looking, but they're a little dirty. I don't know if I can. They're a little dirty. So what I'm going to do is just get some carb cleaner and spray those out. And I have some fogging oil that I bought, and I'll spray that in there and just turn it over without any kind of ignition or anything. And then I didn't get a key, so I'll have to figure out a way to jump the ignition so that I just want to see if this fires. If it fires, then it's worth spending a little bit of money trying to get the trim fixed and a few other things that need to be done to the motor. So next step is clean the carburetors and get some fuel hooked up to it. So I'm gonna just use just a primer bulb and some regular 3/8 fuel line and go into that fitting right there that I got at Walmart. So let me get that hooked up and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a little makeshift fuel tank set up here. That does have mixed fuel in it, so that in case the oiling system is not working on that. If this runs, I intend to go through everything and actually clean all that up, clean all this dirt and all that, tune it up, and make sure that the oiling system works right. And then I'll clean up all the wiring, make sure that the oiling system works the way it's supposed to. There's a bunch of hoses missing. I think this is the tattletale or the P-tube or whatever. And I realized that by spraying the inlet to the carbs out, I didn't really clean the carbs. What I meant is there wasn't a bunch of trash in the inlet to the carbs. And I did just clean that out. The little bit of trash that was in there, I got it out just to make sure we're not gonna suck anything extra up. But I think we are about ready to see if we can get this thing to turn over. And then we're also gonna need to hook some water up in case it starts when we get to that stage. I'm gonna go ahead and get the control panel taken apart so I can figure out which wire is the ignition wire and also which wire is the start wire so we can see if this thing will even turn over. I'll see you guys in just a bit. All right, I don't remember exactly where we left off. It's been a couple of days. I had to order some parts. And so let me show you where we're at. If you remember, when I bought this boat, it was supposed to have a bad stator. And when we started looking, we noticed that these two yellow wires here, which go to the stator, were just stripped back and hanging out inside the side cover here. And then these two wires here were hooked up to the rectifier, which is right there, that box that those yellow wires are now going to. Well, the way this is supposed to be wired is those yellow wires from the stator are supposed to go to the rectifier. And then if you have a 4-cylinder, which as you can see, this is only a 3-cylinder. If you have a 4-cylinder, these two wires go to that switch box there. Otherwise, they go to a case ground, which is where they are now going right there on the bottom of that relay or solenoid for the trim. So now we got that hooked up correctly. We also hooked up some actual battery cables, and these probably aren't heavy enough, but they were here, and I don't want to spend any more money than I absolutely have to on the boat. So for right now, we have these two wires, or this wire here, this orange wire here, that is going to the battery side of the starter solenoid, and that's where all the power kind of jumps around on this motor. And then down here you can see we have this wire here that's ran up here, and it will be grounded to the starter mount bolt up here, but right now it's not because we have to change the starter. This starter is no good. It doesn't turn over properly, and it doesn't spin the motor the way it's supposed to. So I have a new starter on the way. And then we also ran our battery cables down here, and let me move my cover out of the way here. We ran our battery cables down here and into the box here. And then they just have ends to go onto a stud type battery, and we will get one of those. I'm going to pull the one off my flatbed trailer that's on the winch and use it for right now. And then I also cleaned up some of the wiring in here. If we look right over here, yeah, it's all right there. There's the rat's nest of wiring that was in this boat. Sometimes it's easier just to start over. So I pulled all the wiring. If you remember right, there was some wiring up here in the front as well. I got all that wiring out. We still need to vacuum this out and get it cleaned out, but for today, our goal is to get this thing running. And I have a new starter. I have a new starter. I also have a new ignition switch for the remote control, And we're gonna start with those two pieces, get a battery in here, and then I think we should be ready to put some fuel to this and try to get it running. So I'm gonna get the starter changed, get that key switch changed, and that's where we'll be when we get back. See you guys in a bit. Okay, I just wanted to show a quick clip of, this is how you know if you have this throttle lever hooked up right. If you watch that lever right down there, see that's the throttle only lever. The one closest to us here is the throttle lever. This one back here is the shifter. And I really don't know if I can do this with one hand. As you can see, I don't have any cables hooked up to this yet. They're not here yet, but that back one is the shifter lever. And the front one up here is the throttle only lever. So as long as this is working properly, you know you got that back cover back on in the right place. And then obviously around the sides, you can see here that gap should be closed completely up like that. All right, time to get the starter changed. I'm gonna leave this back cover off the bottom here because the shifter cable should be here today, and we'll go ahead and get those put on, and then we're gonna mount this where it goes in the boat. Okay, so we got the starter all changed. And there's just the 4 bolts. There's one here, one here, one down here, one here. And then your positive lead comes from the solenoid over here to the bottom lug. And then there's a tapped and threaded hole at the top of the starter. So my boat didn't have this cable, but in the Mercury manual it shows it there. So it's just a ground, it's a case ground. This is actually mounted in rubber at the top and the bottom. So you really need that ground. So I went ahead and hooked that ground up to the same place I grounded the negative battery cable up here to the starter bolt, which goes into a case ground. And now we are ready to clean this mess I made of tools here up and get the battery installed. And we'll see if our new ignition switch and our new starter works and if this turns over. And then it'll be ready to try and fire this thing. Okay, so we have our battery installed. As you can see there, don't mind the rusty bolts. It sits on my trailer outside. I decided before I went and fire this up, I might as well go ahead and pull the plugs out of it and just have a look and see what they look like. Well, there they are. I would get that in focus. They're brand new. They've never even been run. I'm actually starting to get a little bit worried. I don't know why somebody would put brand new plugs in it. Like I said, I was told the stator didn't work. Well, I'm starting to worry that maybe the problem is actually the trigger, not the stator. So I'm going to spray some fogging oil down in the holes just to get a little lubrication on the pistons before we start turning this over. And we are going to see if it'll turn over, and we'll go from there. I'm going to go ahead and set this camera on the tripod and see how this goes. Okay, well, here goes nothing. I don't have... Actually, I'm going to go ahead and hook water up to it just to get some lubrication on that water pump before we turn it over too much. Okay, we've got some water going to it. Let's see what it does. Okay, well, it turns over. Doesn't sound like it wants to fire at all. So let me go get my tester and we'll see if it's got any spark. By get my tester, I meant pull a plug out and see if it's got spark that way, because apparently I don't have my tester. The nice part about not having this bolted to the boat is it's really easy to come back here and watch this. All right, let's see if it has any spark. Yeah, it's got no spark. So I think the problem was not the stator. I think it's probably the trigger, but I'm gonna go do a little research and figure out how we troubleshoot that, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we ended up having to replace the switch box, which is this little doodad right here. I found a local boat shop who was able to get me a used one just so I can try it out. As you can see, I got it all installed. It looks a little different, but has the same part number. This one is an aftermarket one, CDI, so I guess that matches our CDI electronics stator, which I did find all the information to ohm out the stator and the trigger. The trigger, all the wires check good, and this stator checks good. One thing that's important to note that is if you have an aftermarket or a CDI stator, they will ohm different than the factory one, so just be aware of that if you run into this. But we're gonna go ahead and set this down. I don't think it's got enough fuel in it to fire, but we're gonna give it a shot and see what happens. We're gonna go ahead and hook the water up first too. All right, let's see what happens. All right, I didn't figure it was gonna start there, so we're gonna put some fuel to it now. This is mixed again, like I said. And I did check, it does have spark, so we should be all good there now. All right, looks like we have a fuel leak and our battery's going dead. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the cover off these carbs. Okay, so here's where we're at. I removed the carburetors. We know we're not getting fuel because as long as I pour fuel into the carburetors, it'll stay running. So that means our spark system is working now. I can't get the choke to do anything, or couldn't get the choke to do anything. And so I pulled the carburetors off. I've already cleaned them out. I'm not actually going to show a bunch of the footage on that because all you do is you pull the bottom screws out of the bowl there. All I did anyway is pull the bottom screws out of the bowl there, pull the 2 screws out of this top plate here, and then if you look in there, there's that small needle in the middle that's hollow. I just cleaned the passage from the top to the bottom out, and then just cleaned all the gunk out of the carburetors. Any passages that I saw, I cleaned out, and I didn't do a full rebuild. I just cleaned the junk out of them. So, and then what was actually, I think, our problem is behind this drain screw here, there's a cavity that bigger needle and the smaller needle fit down into, and in that cavity there was just dirt or stuff clogging that up, and no fuel was getting into those needles. Pretty sure that was our fuel problem. So now the choke problem is, if you look right here, this is the choke solenoid, and the way this works is as long as you're holding the choke button down on the key, it takes fuel out of this hose here that hooks to the top carburetor, runs it through this solenoid, and it sprays it into this hose here, which goes behind the carburetors and comes in over here behind the oil tank. Let me turn this around. It comes in behind the oil tank over here and hooks into this fitting here, which just basically sprays fuel directly into the intake path of the engine. That's how the choke works. It doesn't have a choke like on a car where you have a flap that closes and mechanically blocks off the airflow to suck more fuel. This just sprays more fuel and keeps the same amount of airflow. So I'm going to replace these hoses. Are all really hard. I didn't get this size, so I'm going to have to go get some more hose for this piece here. I got some 1/4 inch. I got some 5/16. I'm going to replace some fuel hoses, get the carburetors mounted back on here, and then I think it'll be time to try to get this thing to start and see if it'll start and stay running. See you guys in a bit. Okay, we got it all put back together. Got everything hooked up as far as the electronics go, the way it was when it fired yesterday. Got the carbs all put back on. Everything looks like it's back where it goes. I am going to have to replace both of those ends. They're both broken, but it's hooked up now. So it works. I would definitely not trust this on the water, but I have those on order. They're not here yet. I also have a water pump on order. It's not here yet. But for now, you can see my fuel solution is just a 12-gallon portable fuel tank. Fits in there nicely. We got a quick disconnect on the end down there, running through the primer bulb up to the motor. I'm gonna hook some water up to this and we'll see if it'll fire this time. it's idling a little high, but it runs. It's got a little bit of a pop here and there. I'm really not sure what that's about. I think I need to adjust this here. Let me adjust that and we'll fire it back up. And never did get any water coming out of the tattletale, but we got water coming out of this port down here. I'm really not sure where that one goes. Let's see if it'll start and idle a little lower now. Doesn't seem like it's got very good water flow, so we're gonna leave it there for now. It does run. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. So the answer is, if you buy an $800 boat, I mean, honestly, actually in the motor, I have about $100 invested in this, 150 with all the fuel lines and everything, and it does run. Now, it's not right. There is some things that still need to be fixed. It doesn't rev up right. It doesn't seem to be flowing water right. I see there's another hose down here leaking. It looks like water. I'll have to troubleshoot that a little bit more, but it's running, and I think I have something that I can work with. When it's idling, it sounds pretty good. So I am going to continue this, but I'm waiting on a bunch of parts right now. I have a little bit more research to do. I'm going to end the video here. I hope you enjoyed this episode and look for more on this boat in the future. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.